Welcome to the Growth Boss Podcast, where we seek out the secrets to high-performing campaigns from some of the smartest marketers in the world. I'm your host, Gerrid Smith. Today, I have AJ Wilcox with me, and he's going to teach us guaranteed ways to cut your LinkedIn ad costs in half. AJ is the founder of B2 Linked, the only ad agency certified as a LinkedIn partner specializing exclusively in LinkedIn ads. With over 150 million in ad spend managed, AJ and his team help businesses scale their LinkedIn ads efficiently while lowering costs. They focus on B2B services with high value deals, white collar recruiting, and higher education, delivering proven results. AJ has spoken at 80 plus industry events and appeared on over 200 podcasts sharing his expertise. AJ, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, Gerrid, I'm turning bright red. Thank you for the ultra kind intro. You did your research.
Sure did. So AJ, let's say that I'm a prospective client of yours. I'm spending $10,000, $20,000 a month on LinkedIn. Where would you start with me to, cut my ad costs in half?
Yeah, really simple. If you look at the campaign building process on LinkedIn, there are 5 options that LinkedIn ticks by default. Even if you talk to their reps, they'll recommend using all these things, but they are hurtful to your performance. And if you really press on your rep and you say, ooh, this one's not working very well, they're going to be like, yeah, go ahead and uncheck that. Then, sometimes we see this. And I can walk you through what all those options are, but they're basically like LinkedIn makes recommendations on things that are not in your favor, but they are in theirs. And if you know what you're doing, you can cut costs by over 50% by just adjusting a few little, knobs and switches here.
Amazing. Yeah. Let's go through each of those if we can.
Perfect. So when you go to set up a campaign or edit one, the first option you're going to come across is your geography that you're targeting. Makes perfect sense. It's nice and simple. The default option for targeting that geography, though, is called recent or permanent location. What permanent means is, does someone's LinkedIn profile say that they live in this city or state or country? Recent means that they have visited in the last 6 months. So what we find, if you switch this to permanent only, you're getting only the people who fit your criteria that say that they live there versus, sometimes we see if we're targeting the US in the summer, we'll start to get leads from the Philippines and Africa and Europe. And it's because people travel to the US and for a summer vacation. So if you switch that to permanent, you get rid of that whole issue.
Okay.
Next one that you come across is right after you're targeting, LinkedIn leaves a little box checked called Enable Audience Expansion. And remember, and if you didn't know already, we pay a premium to advertise on LinkedIn. And so it really only makes sense to use their targeting to find our exact ideal type of prospects. And so by leaving that box checked, you're letting LinkedIn throw whoever they want into your audience and muddy it. And then you have no reporting telling you the audience that they added, how did they perform compared to the audience you chose? So just always uncheck that.
Yeah, great point.
All right. Next one after that, there's a placement that is called LinkedIn Audience Network. And it sounds great at first blush. What this is the ability to use LinkedIn's targeting to identify people and then reach them when they're on different apps or different websites that are not LinkedIn. Sounds fantastic, but the way that LinkedIn rolled it out is problematic. You end up, there's no pacing on it. So a lot of times you might find you've spent your entire day's budget in the first 20 minutes of the day. Not great. And then when you analyze the traffic afterwards, a lot of times you find that there's there's some spam clicks or bots or things that kind of made it through that shouldn't have. And so if you want to use this, I always recommend using a block list where you've blocked all of the apps, because sometimes app creators can be shady and click on links that the user doesn't know about. But you can take out some of the sites that just don't make sense. Leave only the super high quality like Wall Street Journal and New York Times and Business Insider, those kinds of things.
Okay, very good.
The second to last and last is when you get down to the bidding and budgeting section, the default bidding method that they leave on is called maximum delivery bidding. And what's actually happening behind the scenes, you are paying by the impression. So whether someone clicks or not, you're going to pay. And they are allowed to bid as high as it takes to spend your daily budget. So sometimes you'll find, like, when I see people using just this bidding option, oftentimes I see that they're paying $20 to $60 per click, which is pretty insane to pay for advertising. And by following the recommendations I'm just about to give you, our clients are usually spending anywhere between about $7 to $8 per click. Might still sound expensive to some who, maybe all you do is meta advertising, but this is really good for LinkedIn.
Exactly. I mean, again, if you're targeting CEOs or very high profile individuals, that's cheap to get in front of somebody like that.
Exactly. The right people. I mean, when we advertise across other networks that might be cheaper on a per click basis, when you follow it all the way to what's my cost per meeting booked or my cost per proposal or closed deal, LinkedIn starts to win and win by a lot because we were able to define the absolute ideal prospects up front. Whereas networks like Meta, they just don't know who someone is professionally.
Exactly. I love that.
All right. So if you're not going to use maximum delivery bidding, because that is LinkedIn's most expensive way to pay for traffic 90% of the time, the very best option is actually hidden. There's a line there that says show additional options. When they click that, you can choose a manual cost per click. And then LinkedIn's going to give you this crazy range of, like, other people like you are bidding $26 to $98 per click. Don't listen to any of that. Start really low. If you're targeting North America, which is LinkedIn's most expensive, most competitive market, I would start at like $7 per click. And the really nice thing is, if $7 isn't enough to actually spend your budget on this audience, the worst thing that can happen is you just come back tomorrow and you see that it didn't show enough impressions of your ads to spend the budget. And so I'm just going to come in every 2 or 3 days and up that. I might up it from $7 to $7.25 or $7.50 and just inch up until you actually start spending what it is you actually want to.
Yeah, I love it. That's phenomenal. And oh my goodness, I actually just set up my first LinkedIn advertisement yesterday. I did none of those things, so I will be going back to make sure it's optimized. So this is perfect timing.
Oh yeah. And you'll see from just the one day after making these changes, you'll see your costs drop probably in a half or more.
Amazing. So I know in doing a decent amount of meta advertising, one of the big keys to success is the creative side, right? In making sure you're putting together really great creatives. What, tips, hacks can you give on producing great creatives? And maybe you can also share the types of even lead magnets or anything of that nature that's better to promote. Again, on Meta, for my e-commerce company, I may be running people potentially directly to the landing page to buy, my supplement that I sell. But on LinkedIn, probably looking for a little bit of a longer journey, might send them to a white paper or something like that. So maybe you could share a little bit about both the creative side, but also what's really good to promote to collect that CEO's email address and then sell them kind of down the road. Beautiful
questions. All right. So starting with creative, realize that as people are going down their news feed, you want to grab their attention. We're looking for what we call thumb stoppers. And if you talk to a designer, this is something that they'll understand, but we as marketers, we had to learn. If you have LinkedIn's color palette is very like blues, grays, and whites. If you look at a color wheel where blue is, opposite of that is orange. And that means if you can saturate your image in orange, it's going to stand out the most. So we try to saturate images in oranges, reds, greens, purples, the kinds of colors that are going to help stand out. And that's one of the best pieces of advice I can give you for still creative.
Yeah, I love that.
We also find that video creative works extremely well, but not the video creative that takes 4 seconds to fade from black and go into B-roll shots of your factory and slow rolling. You're going to pay for anyone who's watching at least 2 seconds of your video ad. So let's give them something in the first second or two that hooks them. There's action, there's a hook, real movement, and talking head videos, like having a face speaking to them, works so much better than an explainer or kind of a general commercial kind of ad. We also found, I'm sure you'll understand exactly what I mean when I say this, the TikTok style captions, where when you're watching a video, there's big animated subtitles. We found just by adding those, we would get twice as many people watching all the way to the end of the video.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, big increase in performance. Because remember, you already paid for anyone who watched more than 2 seconds. So might as well add something that's going to help people, stay longer and suck in more of what you're sharing.
Absolutely.
All right. So that is the creative side. Those are some of my favorite suggestions.
Those are great. Absolutely. And real quick, before we dive into the next part, do you find that there's a significant difference in the cost per lead between static creatives and video creatives?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say yes. So I love video creative on LinkedIn. It's so good at making a personal connection with someone. And we know when we have a relationship with someone that is so much easier to form over video than over static, they're going to have a higher close rate. It's going to be a better lead for us. That being said, every time that I run ads where I run a static visual to a lead form versus a video to a lead form, my cost per lead on the video is higher. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean that it's not worth running, because if the leads that the video generates are higher quality, they're more educated, they close faster, they close for higher amounts, then that can be worthwhile. But if you're just comparing apples to apples, video is a little bit more expensive. And if I had to guess, I think the reason why is that when you show someone a video, there's inherently 2 calls to action. There's like, 1, keep watching this video we put in front of you. And then number 2, take the action we tell you at the end. And
interesting.
Some people, we know the more options that we give someone, the higher the probability they choose none of them and keep going.
Yeah. Absolutely. Very good.
All right. So that is it on the creative side. I think those are some of the best recommendations I can give.
Yeah.
But then on the strategy side, you bring up something really valuable. We find with most of our clients we've worked with that if we go directly to cold audiences and show them an ad that says, hop on a call with our sales rep, take a demo, do a free trial,
salesy stuff.
Exactly. We'll see people click. It'll cost you money, but your conversion rate is very low. And then there's a huge high probability of if they do book a call with someone, that they just don't show up. They ghost your rep.
Yeah.
So I try to avoid that whenever possible. I mean, definitely test it out just to see if your company can engage people that way. But most of the time I find that they can't. And so then we move to a 3-stage funnel type of process. So your first touch with someone is very light and educational. Usually we're not asking them for anything. Short video tips, tricks, strategies work really well here. And then LinkedIn has really cool retargeting where you can say, if someone's watched at least 50% of one of my video ads, graduate them to the next stage. Or if they interact in any way with my single image ad, graduate them to the next stage. So then at this next stage, I like to give them more information. Something like an ebook, a guide, webinars, click to learn more on this landing page or web page. Those are all really good offers because you're giving them a deeper level of engagement than just a surface level, like you learned a little bit about us. At this stage, I try to keep things ungated if possible. Meaning we try not to offer a form if we're giving them content. This is purely we want to give you everything of value so that you love us, and we're not going to add any friction in. But sometimes clients say, no, we want to make sure these are gated and collect emails. Okay, totally fine. But then you can say is anyone who interacts with that stage, let's pass them to a third stage. This is the stage where we know someone has had at least 2 meaningful interactions with the brand in recent times. And this is where we've kind of earned the right to ask them to hop on a sales call and actually learn more. And what we find is if we follow this whole kind of a three act story, 3-stage funnel, the bottom stage converts 5 times higher than even the middle. And that converts several times higher than top. So if you're willing and able and can invest in this 3-step
tier,
the 3-tier funnel, now you've got this bottom of the funnel audience that you're building constantly. The more you dump in the top, the bigger that gets. And that's kicking out sales ready leads at really good costs.
Yeah.
Usually I'm seeing that be between about $40 to $400, just depending on the audience and the offer. But that is what I would consider like how to turn your LinkedIn ads into a revenue generating machine.
I love that. And I want to dig in a little bit into each one of those tiers and the type of content that you produce there. But what I like about it the most is, again, if you look at the sales process, kind of like a dating process, people are asking, for somebody's hand in marriage on the first ad. And it's like, most people don't work that way. It's kind of like, hey, warm me up a little bit. Let's get to know each other a little bit. I like walking people through those stages. I don't see that too often in any type of advertising. But what are some good hooks? What are some good creative ideas that you like for each one of those stages?
Yeah, I think this is really simple, actually. In the first stage, you put yourself in the mind of your prospect. What are those things that keep them up at night? What are their biggest challenges, questions, curiosities? And you build content for that. I love video content at this stage, like I've mentioned. And you start with that hook of like, here are the 3 things that solve your major pain point, or this is an industry update you need to know about, or huge product announcement or huge company announcement that is going to affect you. Things like that are great, and you'll get people to watch. In the middle of the funnel, or what I call my stage 2, this is where you have a lot more options of like, oh, do I direct them to a webinar, or try to get them to subscribe to my YouTube channel, or subscribe to my podcast, or here are 3 different ebooks or 2 different guides. And I would just suggest test everything at this stage and see what people like, what's most engaging to them. And then at the final stage, I really only recommend 2 different ad formats. One is a single image ad saying like, hey, come get a demo. And then I'll couple that with what we call conversation ads. This is where you pay per person you send it to, but you send them a very personalized message from an individual in your company, inviting them like, hey, I'm inviting you to come and sign up for a demo and, talk to someone to learn more. And
I love that. I had no idea that was even an option. What a cool deal.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of those ones like, because you pay by the send, if you try to use that earlier in the funnel, let's say even to cold audiences, people go, I've never heard of you before. And so they don't even open. Or it looks like an ad. It looks spammy. And so they don't open or click. And so your effective cost per click or cost per lead is really high. But if you run it at the bottom of the funnel with these people who already recognize you, there's already some know, like, and trust built up. Yeah. Then they're going to open at a much higher rate, click at a higher rate, and convert at a higher rate. And they actually become really valuable.
I love that. AJ, what are you looking forward to in 2025? Either testing or new features on the platform that you're looking forward to? What would you say you're really excited about right now?
All right. So this is a Gerrid Smith exclusive.
Okay.
So what I want to share, I have a podcast episode on my podcast, The LinkedIn Ads Show, that's going to come out here in probably the next few weeks, where I'm sharing something that I thought was crazy. What we found across 4 accounts where we're running a lot of video, we found that what we call the 16:9, the wide format video, is outperforming square and vertical video in every aspect of LinkedIn ads.
Wow.
So that's crazy. But all of this testing has been done with kind of studio quality creatives, think like a TV ad that's been very professionally produced. What I want to find out, and the tests I'm going to do here in 2025, are if I take these talking head videos that I've been talking about, if I format them in all 3 sizes and do the same tests, does the same rule hold up? Or do we find that people interact differently with a talking head video versus like a studio quality video? So that's the big test I'm excited about.
Okay. I love that. Very cool. And how are you guys using AI in your LinkedIn advertising process?
We've tested about everything I can think of because I'm really interested in AI and I love it. We've used it to write ad copy, but honestly, it takes a lot of prompt engineering and a lot of customization to get the ad copy that it spits out to sound anything but robotic and like it was AI created. Yeah. So that one's a little bit more difficult. We've tried things like Midjourney and DALL-E for the visuals of ads, but again, it takes a lot of prompt engineering to get something that looks good, and it's constantly misspelling things and whatever. I've tried using AI for data analysis. So can I feed it data about ads and say what's performing well and what's not? Large language models, surprisingly or unsurprisingly, aren't so great at computational and data and math. And so I'm finding that's not working so great. So I think all of this is going to improve. I think in the future, writing ad copy, creating the visuals is going to be all really easy. And even like the reporting, the data analysis. But right now, honestly, I'm doing a lot by hand.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to know that it's a very manual process, very human process, and we can skip the AI hacks at least for now.
Yeah. But if you have any AI hacks to share with me that are especially working on other networks, boy, I'd sure love to test them on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. And as far as one of the questions I really like to ask is, what are the top 1% of your clients have in common? And you've worked with a lot of clients. You guys are huge on LinkedIn. What are kind of the attributes that you feel like, okay, these top maybe 3 or 4 clients that you've worked with, this is what made them great. And this is what also made our relationship so great together.
Oh, I love this question. What I find is there's usually 2 things in common among our top 1% of clients. Number one is they actually have product market fit. We don't actually know. I mean, anytime I'm looking to bring on a new client, we don't know what their level of product market fit is. We know what we want to test, but ultimately we don't know like how well, when someone talks to sales, is the product going to actually fit their needs and in a way that they'll pay for it. So not a whole lot of interviewing or anything I can do to ascertain real product market fit, but that's number one. If you have really good performance coming from other ad platforms and, from past marketing, rolling into LinkedIn, chances are you can say, ooh, tick, I've got the product market fit. The other one is having internal influencers in the company. A lot of times it's the founder or CEO, but also a lot of times they're too busy and you try to find someone else who's a subject matter expert or good on camera. If you have someone like that who is willing to hit record on a camera and record these short little videos, we find that those are the very best performing ads on LinkedIn, especially because in the last year and a half, LinkedIn gave us this new ad format called thought leader ads. And this is where you can promote an individual's post, not just a company post. And so if you have, let's say your CEO records a quick 20 to 40 second video of, here's a quick tip or a strategy or an update. They then post that on their own LinkedIn profile. And then the company boosts that, promotes that post as an ad, as a thought leader ad. That is by far the most engaging first touch you can have with a brand. And that's what I find. Some companies,
I love that.
They can't get someone who's willing to hit the record button. And so they can't use this strategy, but the ones who do, and they can leverage their internal influencers, boom, it's cleaning up.
I love that. And will their profile actually gain more followers from that advertising as well? Really? That's cool.
Yep. What we find is if we promote company posts, we'll see this metric of company, like clicks to company page and company follows. If we do the same thing with personal profiles, we get the same thing. Clicks to their personal profile and paid follows. It's not what I would call super efficient of like, oh, I'm going to run some ads so I can pay for new followers.
Sure.
But if you realize this is just gravy, I'm running ads that are serving another purpose. And by the way, I got 7 new followers this week.
Exactly. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. All right. Actually, for my last question, I want to move away from LinkedIn advertising specifically. And I want to talk about the top lessons you've learned growing the largest LinkedIn advertising agency. So from a management, a leadership perspective, what are the top lessons that you've personally learned along that journey?
Oh, the biggest lesson I think I've learned is delegation. When I first started this agency, it's now been over 10 years ago. I was never an entrepreneur before, never considered it. I just figured I was always going to be a cog in a wheel at some large company. And after hopping into it, starting to run my own business, I very quickly realized that I started this agency to help people with LinkedIn ads because I was really good at LinkedIn ads. But then when you run a company, you also realize you have to be the sales guy. Oh, and someone's got to kick out invoices and do like, I don't know, handle all the finances stuff. Yeah. And then there's operations, and then there's scheduling and all of these things that I was not prepared for. And so as a dumb early entrepreneur, I was trying to hold on to all those things because everything revolves around me. But as soon as I realized I'm okay handing this task to someone else who may only do it 80% as well.
Yep.
But I'm okay with that. I'm okay letting someone do it not as well as me, realizing that now we all get to work together and take things off each other's plates and run a lot more efficiently. I find it still painful every new task. Like you feel like you're giving away your babies, but every time I've been able to give a task to someone else, it actually gets done as opposed to piling up on my to-do list.
Yep. And you're the bottleneck, right?
Yep, always.
Amazing. AJ, thank you so much. For people who want to connect with you and your agency, what's the best way for them to do that?
If you follow me on LinkedIn, just go search for AJ Wilcox. I'm constantly sharing all the best stuff for free. Our website is b2linked.com. So go check that out. You can see pricing and contact us there. But if you're listening to this show, which I know you are, you're a podcast listener, I would say go search out the LinkedIn Ads Show podcast in whatever player you're using. And I go really deep and geeky into all these different aspects of LinkedIn ads every week. And I invite you to follow there.
Awesome. I think this was an exceptional taste tester for that. So I would encourage people to do the same. AJ, thank you so much again.
Thanks, Gerrid.